Hey everybody, it's Ann Beebe. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. I'm Barb Hammer, and today I want to do a video that Scott Creighton on his Church Dog 42 channel had inspired. It got me thinking. So he did this video today about Bernie Sanders' announcement that he is definitely running for president in 2020. So Scott's video is called, "Oh God, Sheepdog Sanders is running again." And I watched the video and it reminded me of something that Scott had told me about, or reminded me, he had refreshed my memory. So some time ago, last year, I was involved in Cindy Sheehan's Women's March on the Pentagon that was held last October in the DC area at the Pentagon. And I'm still on their mailing list. And what's funny is I'll still get these invites to join them for webinars or some online chat on their Facebook group. But they kicked me out of that Facebook group because I disagreed with them about their position on supporting the migrant caravans in Tijuana, and which is to force comprehensive immigration reform, which would be open borders. And that is a right-wing agenda that originally started with the Koch brothers. And then the GOP during George W. Bush's administration supported that agenda. And John McCain promoted that too. So George W. Bush and John McCain promoted comprehensive immigration reform, open borders, which would lead to cheaper labor. Really, it would suck undocumented workers into this endless cycle where they would be exploited and never achieve any legal status in the U.S. And it would just drive down wages and essentially legalize slave labor, which the corporations really want. And unfortunately, Cindy Sheehan, her group supports that agenda. I don't know what's going on there, but they're not really, I would argue, they're not really anti-establishment or anti-war, really, because they don't get the foundation for regime change and wars, and it's part of the neoliberal agenda. Anyway, so Scott had mentioned in his video that Bernie, in his campaign announcement, supported comprehensive immigration reform. But Scott had reminded me when I was in Cindy Sheehan's Facebook group that Bernie Sanders opposed comprehensive immigration reform. And he had explained that it was a Koch Brothers idea and it was a right-wing agenda. So it got me thinking, Scott didn't mention in this video that Bernie had originally opposed that and had a very strong position about it. And you can even find at least one YouTube video where he states that. So when I was arguing with the Cindy Sheehan's Women's March on the Pentagon group, which banned me and has smeared me and called me a bigot, he mentioned Bernie's support or opposition to open borders and comprehensive immigration reform. So I did a little search and I found a link to Bernie's website, which was originally his 2016 campaign website. So I wondered if that link, since Bernie was announcing his campaign and saying that he supported comprehensive immigration reform, I wondered, was his original position still on his website? So I did a search, and you can still find that link when you do a search. You can still find that link. Whoops. Hang on. That's not it. Yeah, well, this is it, really. So let me see here. Yeah, so when you do a search, you if I type in Bernie Sanders open borders, there is still the top result of that search shows you a link to Bernie's website here, and it says open borders, a gimmick, not a solution. And there's also at least one YouTube video here where he talks about it, that it's a Koch Brothers agenda. And it would just lead to poverty, global poverty. Because if you allow workers to travel freely between countries, and the corporations, they're always going to want the cheaper labor. So that's what you get when you do a search. And then, but when you click on this link to Bernie's website, this is what you see now. So since he's announced his run for 2020, that link is gone. And you can see at the top, wait a minute, hang on. Yeah, so if you look at the URL at the top, it has berniesanders.com/open borders, a gimmick, not a solution. But that link, that page is gone. And what it says now is we've run into a huge problem. So at the end, it highlights, it says, and you've landed on a page on our website that doesn't exist. So actually, when you go to Bernie's new website for his 2020 campaign, it is purged of any campaign positions whatsoever. So there are no policy positions at all on his new campaign website. All there is it will ask you if you want to sign up for email. It will ask you if you want to donate, or it will ask you if you want to go to the Spanish language page. That's it. And actually, so I messaged Scott and I told him what I'd found. And actually, when I posted the link in my direct message to him, that picture shows up clearly showing his original position: open borders, a gimmick, not a solution. And it starts out like many libertarian ideas. Open borders is bold, has superficial intellectual appeal, and is incapable of withstanding whatever. Anyway, so yeah, that was Bernie's original position, and he has distanced himself from that position now. So he is supporting the Democratic Party establishment position now for open borders, comprehensive immigration reform, which corporations want. So it's a bipartisan agenda, really. So Donald Trump has spoken out in support of this. And the crisis along the border is to force this comprehensive immigration reform. Both sides are stoking up the fires for this crisis. So what I can't believe is people are still falling for Bernie Sanders. And I have to go back. I mean, I supported Bernie Sanders in 2016. And what was amazing, I'd never gotten involved like that. I'd never gotten involved in a campaign, really. That was the first time for me. And the appeal was not so much Bernie, but everybody was rallying around Bernie. It was a big populist movement, and it united everybody, people on the right and the left, everybody, evangelicals, libertarians, everybody was getting behind Bernie because he represented a populist uprising against the establishment. And that was what was so amazing. So I was very involved. I donated a lot. I phone banked. I worked at the Washington State caucuses just across the border from where I live. And I voted. I had a hard time voting for Bernie in the Virginia Democratic primary. They were they were noticeably trying to discourage me from voting. And I could tell I was on the radar and they were trying to discourage me, but I persisted. And I got my ballot in, but I'm sure they shredded it or it was flipped to Hillary or something. Um, so I just want to remind people, I remember that time and I was really involved, and it was amazing. And he had I thought for sure that he would get the nomination and become president, because it's just amazing the backing that Bernie had. And he had this amazing campaign ad. And I thought, well, that's a winner for sure. It reminded me of, unfortunately, Ronald Reagan had a Morning in America, a very winning campaign ad. And this was an amazing campaign ad, with the Simon and Garfunkel song, America. So it was very disappointing what happened in 2016. And I was not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. I ended up voting for Dr. Jill Stein of the Green Party. And so Bernie's support was split up. So I think a lot of people did vote for Hillary because they were afraid of a Trump presidency. And then some people wrote Bernie in on their ballot in November. Some people like me voted for Dr. Jill Stein. And then a lot of people didn't even vote, because I think now Bernie had a broad coalition, but among people who normally voted Democratic, like me, I think only 42% of those people actually voted in November. People who normally voted Democratic. So I don't know what, as Scott was saying, I don't know what is wrong with these people. It is the definition of insanity if you think doing the same thing will end in a different result. And it really is a case of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not falling for this. I'm actually not. I don't vote anymore. I haven't voted since 2016. I don't think anything will change. I don't agree with Scott. I don't think, even if Bernie got the nomination, I don't think he could defeat Trump, because people are still so pissed off about what happened in 2016. And I think a fair number of the people who were Bernie supporters and voted for Trump in 2016, I think they might either not vote or still vote for Trump. So I don't agree with Scott that Bernie could beat Trump. I just don't see that. Bernie does not have that kind of support anymore. It's amazing how many people are still falling for this. And very sad. I'm not, I was really, I hate to use the word, but I was really burned in 2016. And so, I fell for the whole campaign, and I was very disappointed when Bernie just swung his support to Hillary, and he didn't dispute all the election fraud or anything, even though he clearly won the nomination fair and square. But Bernie wasn't cheated. Bernie's supporters were cheated. Bernie is a sheepdog. He's a sheepdog. And I would say don't get sucked into any Democratic Party campaigns. Don't get sucked into Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is a little bit better than Bernie in some ways. At least she stands up against some regime change, but she has supported like sanctions against Russia, and she supports the military, and she doesn't really question what's happened in the Middle East. And you got to remember, Tulsi Gabbard, she was the co-chair of the DNC back in 2015, and I think she resigned late 2015 or early 2016 because she saw that the DNC was favoring Hillary over Bernie. And Tulsi Gabbard, don't forget, she was a surrogate for Bernie Sanders. And there's some other things. Tulsi has quite a following, not just among Democratic Party supporters, but independents and people on the right, especially libertarians. But she's still very questionable. She has some good positions, but I don't support, no one should support anyone in either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in 2020. Don't get sucked into these elections. It's never going to benefit ordinary people in the US. It's just not, because it doesn't matter, as Scott was pointing out, it doesn't matter who becomes president, because he pointed out Obama, had all these progressive positions, but once he got into office, he pushed through his Affordable Care Act, which is what the private health industry wanted. He didn't support public option or anything like Medicare for all. And it doesn't matter even if Bernie still supports Medicare for all. If he were actually elected president, he would do the same thing that Obama did. It doesn't matter. Even look at Trump. So Trump campaigned as a populist, and that's why he won. And that's why he got a lot of Bernie support, because he campaigned as a populist. But he's in office, he's not a populist. So he had promised to protect Medicare and Social Security, and he's distanced himself from that. He and the GOP have this agenda. They're going to privatize government. That's the neoliberal agenda. And he's got a bunch of neocons in his cabinet. And so it's, when Trump was campaigning, he was opposing wars, these senseless wars like what happened in Iraq. But he's appointed all of these neocons, John Bolton, he's got Mike Pompeo, and others, and they're all about regime change in Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter who becomes president. So don't get sucked in this. I'm sorry, but if you get sucked into this, God help you. Scott said that he thought Americans maybe had the memory of a gnat or something. Well, I've seen Canadians do this too. So there are a lot of Canadians who supported Bernie Sanders, and they are falling for this too. And nothing is going to change. Even in Canadian elections, nothing ever changes. It just goes from centrist to right wing, and the corporations always win out, and they have the influence in government. And that's the sad thing right now. And I have to say that this whole open borders and comprehensive immigration reform thing, I have been smeared so much. There's still, if you see any social media account or website that has the name Occupy in it, that is a controlled opposition corporate presence, online presence. And so I get attacked all the time by people who are pretending to be left or anti-war, and they're not really. And it's all tied together. So this whole issue of open borders that Bernie Sanders supports now, which he didn't before, you can see this happening among a lot of people who claim to be on the left or anti-war, but they're supporting a neoliberal corporate agenda that's just going to lead to, as Bernie pointed out, increased poverty. This is when you have the free flow of labor across borders. Wages get driven down. It increases poverty. It doesn't benefit ordinary people. So shame on people like Cindy Sheehan and her Women's March on the Pentagon. They support this open borders agenda. So they would deny that they support Bernie. But in reality, they support what Bernie represents. So they all represent this corporate neoliberal agenda that's just going to impoverish everybody. They don't represent the interests of ordinary people at all. So it's just very sad. Bernie, his whole platform from his old site is gone. So who knows? I mean, as Scott has said, Bernie Sanders has never seen a regime change operation he didn't like. Bernie's got a horrendous foreign policy position. He doesn't support Palestinian rights. There's a video of him arguing with constituents who were opposing his position in support of Israel against the Palestinians. So shame on Bernie. Shame on Bernie. And if you support Bernie again in 2020, shame on you. And it's all about money. He's just filling his campaign coffers with money for his campaign. But it's all one big slush fund in the Democratic Party. So all these candidates, it all goes to Act Blue or whatever website. So it's just one big slush fund for the Democratic Party. And I'm sure all the money that was left over from Bernie's campaign in 2016, it went to Hillary's campaign. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. So don't get sucked into this sheepdog and pony show. Call it just a big circus. The 2020 circus has begun. Don't support Elizabeth Warren, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders. And it looks like Kamala Harris will probably be the new Hillary Clinton for 2020. So everybody's just going to sheepdog for her. And the Democrats, as Scott has pointed out, the Democrats would clearly rather lose to Donald Trump than actually get anybody progressive. I mean, that's the way our system works. So I'm just going to end with this. So I'm going to be participating in Saturday, February 23rd's Hands Off Venezuela protest in Vancouver. That's the closest protest that I can take part in. So I will be there on Saturday. I'll be recording what happens, and I make a point of, if I can go to any of these protests, I will, and I will record them. So stay tuned. I'm going to try to do some other videos before then. There are a lot of videos I've had in mind, but anyway, I really wanted to do this one today in response to Scott's video and Bernie Sanders' announcement that he's running again in 2020. Do not support Democrats. Do not support Republicans. Do not support any third-party candidates. It doesn't matter. It's never going to change anything. Elections, there's so much election fraud. Our elections are fucked. And nothing will ever change this way. We have to get into the streets, I think, and protest the way the yellow vests are. Anyway, thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye.